One thing that always or oftentimes comes up in child custody cases is a parent wanting to know, or one parent complaining that the other parent does not make it possible for the child to have their own room at that parent's house, right? So the parent may be living with relatives, so the child has to share a room with another child. The parent may have a small place, so the child and the parent share a room. Sometimes a parent might sleep in the living room, the child might sleep in the bedroom, or vice versa. There's so many different circumstances and scenarios, right, that families have when it comes to living arrangements. And so one of the misconceptions that people oftentimes have is that when you are in the middle of a custody battle, a lot of times people think that a strong argument is solely the fact that the child does not have their own room at the other parent's house. And it's ideal that a child should have their own room, in theory, I guess, but many people have grown up sharing bedroom with their siblings, with their cousins, with family members, half their lives, most of their lives. Everybody is not or has not always been in a position where they can afford space to accommodate a child having their own room. And is a child having their own room necessary? Not necessarily. One of the things that the court looks at when it comes to trying to determine where the child should live and what's in their best interest is their circumstances as a whole, right? So just because a child doesn't have their own room doesn't necessarily mean that they shouldn't live at that house. But what are the things that are available and that are beneficial for the child living there? So if you're the parent and your child doesn't have their own room at your house and the other parent is trying to make a big deal out of it, one thing that you need to focus on in refuting that argument is what your child does have. So one of the most important things that they are going to need is their own bed, especially if they're not little kids, like tiny toddlers. Children need their own beds, and the courts are going to want your child to have their own bed at minimum. So make sure that you've made arrangements, whether it's a bunk bed, whether it's a futon bed, some sleeping arrangement where the child can lay in their own space and get a good night's rest. On top of that, some of the other things that you should consider making sure that you set up for your child is just making sure they have their own space, even if it's their own corner. Making sure they have the ability to have some type of quiet time so that they can get their homework done and so that they can study for school and things of that nature. And then if your child doesn't spend a lot of time at the home, in particular in that room with whoever they share the room with, focus on all of the other things that your child does outside of the home that are beneficial, right? So after school, we go straight to practice. After practice, we go straight to Bible study, or we come home, we take a shower, then we go to Bible study, or whatever it is that you do. Give the court a map or an outline of your day so that they can understand how much time is your child spending at this home or in this quote unquote small space anyway, right? If you take your child to the library to get their homework done, or they stay after school and get it done in their after school program or with the tutor, things of that nature, then they might not need that much space, right? So it's all about showing how you are able to make sure that your child is good, making sure that even though they don't have their own room, they still have peace. They still have focus, or the ability to focus. They still have support from you. They still have people in the home who love them and care for them and all of these other things. And so you just have to shift the narrative. Don't let the narrative be about the fact that they don't have their own room at your home, right? Depending on the economy, depending on where you live, depending on your circumstances, because everybody comes across hard times at some point, having their own room may not be practical. Them being safe is not negotiable. Them having a healthy relationship with the parent they live with is not negotiable. Having their own room, negotiable. So focus on the things that should be an obligation and highlight how you offer those things. So if the only downside to your child living in your home is that they don't have their own room, then the benefit will be able to outweigh that one little consequence, and you'll be able to map that out for the court. And so don't let people make you think that just because your child doesn't have their own room at your home, that that's not where they should live, because that's not necessarily true.